On this interview episode of Reaching Abundance, it is my honor to introduce you to Tiffany Grant of Money Talk with Tiff. She's a successful business owner and podcaster with about 300 episodes in the bag. She's also a speaker and corporate financial literacy class facilitator whose work has been featured in big platforms like Yahoo Finance, CNBC, NerdWallet, Essence, and MSN. Tiffany is an accredited financial counselor and walks the walk. She's extremely frugal, personally and in her business, and is passionate about helping you save more, get rid of debt, and invest to reach your money goals. Tiff and I see each other a couple times a year at conferences, and I'm ever impressed with her boss business moves. In this episode, you'll hear nuggets about mindset and self-worth, establishing a team, and the importance of just getting your content out there. Thanks so much for being here with me today, Tiffany. I'm really excited to share this space with you. I would love to start off with what your perspective or definition of abundance is, and where you feel you are in your journey on that path.
You know, when people talk about abundance, they're usually talking about money, right? But my definition of abundance stretches beyond that because I believe you are an abundant being and everything around you is abundant. And so, for instance, you know, just being able to be here on this podcast, I am walking in my abundance because not everybody had this opportunity this morning. And so I believe abundance can stretch a multitude of things. There's time abundance, money abundance, health abundance, what have you. And so I just feel like for me, every day that I wake up, I am living in abundance and I'm grateful for everything that I have. And that's just the type of attitude that I like to carry on throughout my day.
Yeah. How has your perspective or mindset toward abundance shifted over the past, let's say, 5 years or so? I know you have gone from being a single mom, being in school, continuing that journey, having kids, growing your business. You've had your podcast for quite a while now. You've been through quite a bit over the past 5 years and grown significantly. And while so many people look at that and say, oh, that's so exciting, she's doing so well, you are, trust me. But I want to know almost like how you felt 5 years ago and what abundance may have felt like or how you might have defined it back then and how it's different now.
Back then, that was before a lot of life happened. That was before COVID. That was before a marriage, a subsequent divorce. That was before, I was just starting as a full-time entrepreneur. Like a lot was going on 5 years ago. And I know for a fact in that time frame, I was not thinking about abundance and, all of those different things. I really started on a journey of finding myself and also diving more into spirituality and things like that, to where abundance started becoming more important to me and how I define it now. So 5 years ago, if you would have said, Tiffany, what is abundance? I would have said a lot of money. Like I want to make sure I'm living abundantly with a whole bunch of cash and, blah, blah, blah. But that was because my viewpoint was really limited when it came to a lot of the things that I know now. And also that I've worked through with my therapist and just doing my own study and all types of things. Like I am a completely different person than I was 5 years ago, but in a good way. And I feel like all of those, because, life gives you ebbs and flows. And when it was ebbing very hard. And so I feel like in those times of the ebbs, it really made me open my eyes to how different life could look if you go on the same path, or if you don't make any changes. If things remain the same, what does that look like? And it also allowed me to be grateful for some things that I did have. I always tell people, life is not what happens to you, it's how you react. Also, another thing that I've learned over the years is life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And so, even the things where other people and even myself, sometimes I'm like, why am I going through this? Like, what is this supposed to teach me right now?
Like, what did I do?
And yeah, what did I do to deserve this? But instead of looking at it in that way, now I look at it as, what lesson can I learn from this? And that is what I have been taking with me, especially the past 2 to 3 years, is what have I learned to this and what lesson did I need to go through in order to become a better person? And so that's how I look at everything now. I was dealing with a lot, and I could have looked at it in like a woe is me type thing, and I would have really, really been stuck. But since I changed that mindset, it really has helped me push forward, even to this day when I deal with other things.
Yeah. So, can you highlight some things that you did differently, like in those ebbs, right? Like there is a time and place, especially for mourning or grief or health challenges or big life changes, right? Like you need to sit in that space. You need to, meditate on that, think about it, get in a comfortable mental space before you force yourself to move on. But when you are ready to take action, to do something differently, can you share maybe a few of those things that you remember changing?
Yeah. Fourth quarter of 2023 was rough for me for many different reasons. I was wrapping up the divorce, which was ongoing for like 2 years. I had started school again. I lost my grandma. I lost like an auntie. Like there was a lot of different things. And then health issues started, which I'm still dealing with. But a lot transpired in fourth quarter. And one thing that I've also worked with my therapist on is first feeling those emotions. Like it's okay to feel how you feel. And I think for me, that's big because everybody outside looking in, they see, oh, Tiffany, she's always so happy and talkative and, all this stuff, even when I'm going through a ton on the back end. And so I was losing track of how I was truly feeling. She even had me print out like a little feeling wheel. And so we've been working through that where I'm like, okay, how do I really feel in this moment? Do I feel sad? Do I feel happy? Do I feel excited? Do I feel anxious? What is that feeling? So I think that's the first thing that I've started doing differently. Second is really incorporating what I talk about all the time, and that's affirmations. I now say affirmations every single day, all throughout the day, multiple times a day. And that really helps me. Like before I got on, I even told Virginia, I said, I'm feeling really down today. Like there goes the emotions.
Yeah.
I'm feeling really down today. But I also said in my head, I didn't say it out loud. I was like, I can do this. I feel okay. Things are going to go great, that type of thing. And so just switching my mindset, because I could have got on here and it would have been like, wah, 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 because that's how I was feeling. But I was like, you know what? No, Tiffany, it's a good day. I started being grateful for, not started being grateful, but just keeping in mind my kids. I'm like, oh, I'm grateful I have kids. I'm grateful I have a roof over my head, all of those things. And that's the type of stuff that I was saying right after I said, oh, I feel horrible today. So flipping that mindset early has been really helpful too. Like I feel what I feel. I acknowledge the emotion, but I don't stay in it for extended periods of time. And that's a lot different than how I used to be. I mean, I have a history of anxiety and depression. And so there's been times where I've stayed in emotions for a while. But now I can, kind of switch that a little better. So I feel like that's another thing that I'm doing differently too. And I can go on, but I think
I
that's
love
enough.
that. And I love how you broke it down, right? Like acknowledge the emotion, don't ignore it, acknowledge it, say it, it's okay. Like bring it to the surface, almost like call it out, and then see what you can do to switch it. So, since you mentioned affirmations, do you have a few that are your like go to favorites that you would like to share?
Yeah, so I believe that affirmations are really personal. Other people can tell you, oh, make sure you say, I have a lot of money,
Like,
or,
I
I
am
am abundant,
wealthy,
or
I
whatever.
am this, I am that, right? Like, but it needs to be shifted. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yes, I feel like you need to figure out what you need to work on as a person and then build affirmations around that. And so for me, for instance, one of mine is I am worthy. I am loved. The reason is because after unpacking, I realized that that's something that I struggle with. I struggle with feeling like I'm worthy or feeling like I'm loved or feeling that, I can raise my prices, what have you. And so I build affirmations around the things that I'm struggling with. So those are just a couple that I have. Of course, there's more. And I used to have one up here on my whiteboard, and it was like, I release all of the blockages that have prevented me from achieving prosperity.
Ooh.
Um, yeah, it was so good. I don't know why I erased it,
Mm,
but whatever I'm going through at the moment, I kind of base my affirmations around that.
I really like that. You are worthy.
Yes.
So,
Yes, I am.
talk to me a little bit about your business journey. For anybody listening, you and I had a brief conversation beforehand, and I was sharing with you that there's kind of like two perspectives about entrepreneurship. One camp of people believes that, gosh, we must just have it so easy, right? Like we created our own schedule, we do what we want, we wear sweatpants all day. I am wearing sweatpants.
Me too.
Yes.
Business up top,
um,
party on the bottom.
exactly. When in doubt, throw on a jacket. And, joking aside, though, that we can control our income, and you can take each of these little phrases the positive way or the negative way. But then there's the other group of people that believe that entrepreneurship is, I don't know of a better way to say it, but that it's just too hard. Like for some reason that we can do it, but they can't. For some reason that, oh, but we're capable, or we have the tools, or we have the connections, and that they would never be able to. And I feel like there are truths and false statements in both of those camps. So, what I wanted to get to with you mentioning the affirmation about being worthy is in your business journey, as your belief of worthiness has grown, what has that done for your business? To me, my head immediately goes to pricing, but there's more than that. And I think business owners need to know that piece.
Yes. So a lot. Well, let's start with pricing, right? First and foremost, like when I started Money Talk with Tiff, it was just a side business. It wasn't even a business. It was just something I like to do, right? And when I decided to go full time in 2019, I kept that same mentality. And I realized very quickly that I need to start charging people what I'm worth. And I mean, at that time, that worth, and I'm doing air quotes, wasn't what it is now because, as you grow in your industry, the price increases. But, prior to going full time, I was only charging $20 for a session. And it was because I just loved talking to people and I loved helping them with everything and so on and so forth. And I realized that that is not going to be sustainable if I want to treat this like a business. And so I had to say, well, Tiffany, what is your time really worth? And even to this day, honestly, I struggle with pricing. I was just thinking about that this morning, actually. Now, it's not $20, that's for sure, but
I hope not.
it's I feel like it is a common struggle with business owners because instead of working for someone and they're like, this is what you're worth as far as your salary, right? As an entrepreneur, you have to figure that out on your own. And it is a very difficult process, and especially when you don't feel worthy. And so working through that really helped in that aspect. One thing that I used to do was every time I got a big feature or a big shout out on things, I would just go curl up in a ball. And I would be like, what if people are like, well, what is she doing? Like, she doesn't have, at that time, any financial, anything, as my background was in HR or whatever. So then I'm like, oh my gosh, now I'm more visible. People are going to find out that I don't really have a finance background. I'm just out here talking and just talking about my journey or what have you. And so I used to crawl up in a ball. And it wasn't until recently, honestly, I would say the past year or so, where I realized, no, Tiffany, like, you belong in this space. And not only do you belong in this space, other people in this space believe you belong in this space. So there's no need for you to feel like that. But that was a really real feeling. And I was scared of success for a long time because I didn't feel like I was worthy. I didn't feel like I was good enough to have all those accolades and things like that.
Have you ever pictured yourself having your own show? Maybe it's time. This show is edited and produced by podcastabundance.com. And if you like what we're doing, we can do it for your business too. I'm Virginia Elder, and I've been helping entrepreneurs start podcasts to market their business since 2019. I coach you through branding, structuring your episodes, workflow, and recording your podcast. Then my team and I professionally edit your audio and video so that you don't have to. We'll even write your episode descriptions and titles so that when potential customers turn to Google, your show appears in their search results. Establish authority in your niche, expand your reach, and create a library of helpful content for potential and current clients, all with your own podcast. I'm here to hold your hand and make podcasting the exciting, up-leveling experience it should be, skirting you past the tech and software struggles too. Take the first step by booking a call with me using the link in the show notes or by visiting podcastabundance.com. Now, on to the rest of the show.
So the other thing too that recognizing my worth did was I love speaking. Speaking is a big part of who I am. But years ago, I say a couple of years ago, I wasn't getting hardly anything for speaking. Either I would do it for free or I would do it low cost because I'm like, oh, I just want to teach people and I just want to, whatever. And now that I'm thinking about it, it's probably because I didn't feel worthy to be on the stage. So I'm like, oh, I'll just do it for free because it doesn't, they don't have to pay me too much, whatever. But now, no. Now I definitely know my worth when it comes to speaking. And what helped with that was speaking to like a business advisor that I had. And she was like, Tiffany, like you have receipts on receipts on receipts. There's people that don't have half of what you have and are charging this for speaking. So what are you doing? And just having someone give it to me straight like that. And I'm just like, you're right. Like I have a lot of things behind my name and accolades, and I know what I'm talking about. And if other people that don't have half of that are charging more, then why aren't I? And so that really helped as well. So between pricing, speaking, and then also being in the spotlight, those were definitely some things that I processed with worthiness.
Well, and I find it so interesting. Like you said, your coach said, like, what are you doing? You have receipts, like charge your worth. What are you thinking? And it's like this conundrum almost of belief versus proof. Well, to get the proof, you have to have the belief first because you have to be able to take that action. But sometimes we almost need those receipts, that proof, to be able to believe. So every piece of business, I think, is this, I don't know, ball of those things like rolling around where I can meditate, do affirmations, I can do things, really work on my belief, get that up, and I can take action in that powerful space. And then suddenly those receipts and that proof comes. And for whatever reason, maybe I can hang on to that, but sometimes I can't. And so my belief tanks again. So then guess what else tanks? The proof. So I think in every space, every piece of the business, right? Whether you're talking about pricing, marketing, even something so simple as to say, hey, I think we're a good fit. Let's do business together. It takes a certain amount of belief to be able to have that conversation, especially if you're doing any kind of cold outreach, or even like you want a speaking gig on stage and you want to be able to garnish a portion of that audience as clients after the talk. The belief has to be there. So then how do you get the proof first? It's just like the chicken and the egg thing.
Talking about the proof part, one thing that I've done for a long time, which helps at times to get past that point, is I keep track of everything. So like every time I'm mentioned in something or I have a big feature or what have you, it all goes into my database. And when I do feel those downtimes, like, oh, I'm not worthy or this, that, and the other, then I'll go back and look and say, well, dang, Tiffany, you was on Yahoo Finance, you was on MSN, you was on all these different things. You got this, so it does help in that regard when I do feel those moments. And I would say this is like imposter syndrome, where I do feel those moments of imposter syndrome where I'm like, do I belong? Am I doing enough? How do people feel about me in this space? I go back to that and I'm like, no, you're good. You're good. So I do want to give that to the audience to keep track of those receipts and that proof because it helps.
Would you be able to share? Is it just a simple spreadsheet, or what's your system for tracking those things? Like, what can we implement?
Oh, systems.
Okay, good.
Yes, I love systems. I use Notion to keep track of everything. So Notion is like my company database, and I have a section that's recent press. So anytime I have Google alerts on for my name, my business, all of that. So anytime I get featured, like for instance, this podcast will end up on it once it releases. But anytime I'm a guest on something comes up on Google, what have you, I copy it and I paste it right there as soon as I see it. So that way I don't forget about it. And then also I do Google myself every now and then, because sometimes I don't get the alerts and I don't know that something's out there. And so just Googling myself periodically is something that I do as well. So just have something where you can just put links in real quick, or sometimes it's in-person events. So I'll put a copy of the flyer or what have you. And so just somewhere where you can collect that information. It could be something even as just your notes on your phone, but it's just really helpful to do that.
Absolutely. Well, and I want to highlight, you are someone who has almost 300 episodes on your podcast, I believe. A beautiful website full of information. When I look at your business and your media presence, I'm seeing a lot of information, great features as far as who you are, what you do, why you do it, the letters behind your name, all of that. Like, your credibility is there. And for someone at that level of success to be feeling sometimes unworthy, who do I think I am? Do I belong? All of these questions, I think that's just testament to this is completely normal. And for anybody to feel that, and I've heard this from people that you would think like, yeah, for surely they don't have any imposter syndrome, right? They have millions of followers, millions of dollars, right? Like, they're on all the stages being paid a bazillion bucks just for a talk, right? They do have it. And so I think for so long, even in my own business journey, when I would have those feelings, I would think either there's something wrong with me, or that I'm the only person feeling this way, or almost like I'm not cut out for this, or, just even further going down that rabbit hole. So I think it's important to highlight that no matter where you are on your journey, in your business towards abundance, no matter how visible you are, right? Those feelings still exist.
Really quick on that. A while ago, somebody said, and I can't remember who, but they were like, real imposters don't have imposter syndrome. And when they said that, I said, like if you look at all the scammers or people doing like bad business or what have you, they are so confident. They are so like, you know, they'll get on live and they'll just tell you all about the scam and they have no qualms about it. And so I'm like, oh, that has some validity that real imposters don't get imposter syndrome. So if you're feeling imposter syndrome, that means that you're probably not an imposter.
That's powerful to be able to remember that, right? Like in those moments when you're feeling, what am I doing? I don't belong here. Who am I? All of this. For me, the thought more often hasn't been, who am I? It's more of like, almost like, who do I think I am? Like I'm stepping into shoes that don't fit or something like that. And when I really take the step back and examine, let's say I did a speaking event at a conference or something, and I have some of those feelings. And when I step back and think about what happened after the event and what people said to me about the talk or, about whatever it was that I did, nobody came up and said, you suck. What were you doing on stage? What were you thinking? This was the worst talk I went to, or like anything like that. Like it's never been negative. And so the shift for me, and you can validate this if you like, is realizing that nobody really wants you to fail. Everybody's actually really sitting in those seats or listening to your show or doing whatever it is, checking out your website because you are successful. They want you to be successful, right? Or they wouldn't even be looking at you. They wouldn't search for you because you're just not aligned at that point. And kind of just realizing nobody's actually wanting you to fail. Even when you think they are and you feel like somebody's always discouraging you, they're actually trying to protect you in their own weird way. So that was a big shift for me.
I would say most people, you always have some haters out there.
Yeah, there's trolls.
You always have some haters. And if you don't have haters, right, you're not doing something right. But yeah, I would say most people do want you to succeed. And one thing that really helped me with speaking, believe it or not, I used to be really shy and really quiet in high school and stuff. What really helped me when I do speaking engagements, I had to understand that people are coming to see me. They already see me as the expert. They already hear what I want to say. And so that helps with that anxiousness and that nervousness. It's like, I am the expert in the room, and these people wouldn't be here if they didn't want to hear me speak. So I wanted to give that nugget as well that, if you put things in perspective versus staying in your own mind and in your own thoughts, that can also be really helpful if you struggle with these same things that I'm talking about, because we will have the doom and gloom for ourselves. Even if we're like, let's say, for instance, Virginia comes to me and she's like, Tiffany, I really struggle with public speaking and I really want to do better and this, that, and the other. I'll say, well, Virginia, you got this. You can do this. Like, da 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 da. And I'll give her all of this positive talk and stuff. But when it comes to ourselves, we give ourselves all of the negative self-talk. And so another thing that I kind of focus on is talk to myself like I'm a good friend versus talking to myself like I'm myself. Because we give our friends all of the positive words. And so we need to keep those positive words for ourselves as well.
Since you mentioned a few minutes ago how, sometimes when you were featured on a, Yahoo Finance or something like that, it would send you into this curled up ball and, hiding from the world. And I completely understand that. I think that's totally normal too, by the way. Even though as a business owner, we know there has to be a certain level of visibility, right? Like people have to know who we are and know what we do and how we help. And there has to be that level of visibility for people to even do business with you. But yet, every step toward being more visible and playing bigger and being on more stages or on more podcasts or whatever it is scary. And so we tend to withdraw and curl up and try to hide. And sometimes it feels like what's wrong with me? Like, what am I doing? I said I want this and I got it, and now I'm hiding. Or I'm, yeah, even depressed, right? For a couple days. And I will share that when I am in a lower space, I will allow myself a couple days. Sometimes it passes naturally. Sometimes on that third day, I have to kick myself in the butt and say, get over yourself. But allowing that is important. But I would love for you to talk on that visibility piece and what visibility looked like for you when you started your business and what visibility means to you now.
At the beginning, it was just a blog. And so I didn't really need to be visible. Like people would just go and read, stuff. But I had a social media presence from the beginning too. So I guess in a way I was visible, but I was never on camera. Like, you would see me type, I would type for the blog, I would type for social media or what have you. But I never did videos and I never, did any of that stuff. It took a little bit, a couple of years before I decided to put myself out front. So more pictures, more videos, my pictures popped up on the website after a while and so on and so forth. And for me, it wasn't because I didn't want to be out front. It was just that I didn't have a need to, when it was like all written content and I'm behind the computer screen, it wasn't really a need to do that. And then YouTube started taking off. So I was like, oh, let me make some like YouTube videos and see how that is. In my first YouTube video, I said, hey, it's Money Talk with Tiff. I'm coming from behind the screen, that type of thing, because I was always behind the screen. So once I did that, started the podcast, I just started getting more and more comfortable being out front, which, now when you think Money Talk with Tiff, you see my little black face in your head probably.
Everywhere, on all the platforms.
Everywhere.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. Right. But it took a while to get to that point. And even now, as I'm thinking about exit strategy, I'm actually dialing that back some now. That's another thing that a lot of small business owners don't think about is what does your exit look like? Like, yeah, you love doing what you love to do. Don't get me wrong. I love Money Talk with Tiff and I feel like I could do it forever. But I know realistically, I probably won't be like a 70-year-old still doing Money Talk with Tiff. So I am, thinking about exit. And so what does that look like for me? Well, after I got a business valuation, it meant getting my face off of things because if somebody's wanting to buy Money Talk with Tiff, then they're not going to want my face all on it because it's going to be attached to me. And so now I'm kind of reverting back to how I was when I first started and having less of me, more business, if that makes sense. But I will say also with the features and stuff, my first feature, I curled up in a ball, like first huge one, because I've always been featured in different things. But my first huge one, which was CNBC, because I was on the front page of Google, like it was just everywhere. And I got so overwhelmed because my email inbox blew up, my DMs blew up, everything just blew up. And everything was manageable up until that point. And so when that happened, I just shut down. Like I was probably for like a good month, I didn't touch anything. I was just like, I just wanted to all go away. And hindsight 2020, looking back, I'm like, dang, I could have
Dang it.
capitalized on that. But at the time, it was just too much. I was already like, oh my gosh, I need to hire a VA and, all of these different things. And I wasn't ready when it happened. And so I just ended up shutting down. But now when I get big features, I'm like, all right, let's go. I have the VA in place. I welcome them with open arms. If anybody's listening and connections, let me know. But it's like now that doesn't bother me as much anymore. And I feel like it's the more it happens. So the more practice you get, if public speaking's not your thing, the more times you get in front of a stage or the more times you have to talk to people and maybe do customer service or what have you, it makes things easier to get through. So at that time, my first big feature, I did not capitalize on the opportunity at all. But subsequent ones, absolutely. Absolutely. So, you live and you learn. And like I said, I knew why I crawled up in the ball. A, I was scared of success. B, I had imposter syndrome. Like, oh my gosh, people that don't know me, are not familiar with Money Talk with Tiff and Tiffany Grant. What are they going to think? And then also, I have a team in place. So it doesn't bother me as much as it did. So I learned from that situation. And now when any other opportunities come my way, I'm ready for it.
So you highlighted so many amazing things there. For one, I want to highlight the business journey of starting, becoming visible, and then pulling back your visibility so that it's an actual brand instead of a personal brand. As I speak to various business owners, generally they come to me wanting to start a podcast, wanting to start getting visible. Initially, I'm looking at their brand and seeing where they are, right? So many people make the mistake of starting that brand without their face. And initially, people want to do business with people, right? Like, I want to do business with you specifically. Your brand, messaging, your website might be beautiful. There might be a lot of things going on, but who am I going to talk to? Those are the things I want to know. Who's going to be messing with my account? Who's in my stuff? Who am I going to be sharing my numbers with? That's what people want to know. So initially, your personal visibility in your business is super important as far as marketing and sales business standpoint. But then you're doing the right thing. And that is the natural cadence of your business journey, is as you start to look at growing, potentially selling, like whatever your future strategy is, and all business owners should be thinking about this. What does that look like? And a lot of times that means slowly, but nothing abrupt, right? But slowly replacing your picture with maybe team members, or maybe just better branding, or it's just going to look different. And so that's an important piece I wanted to highlight. The other thing that I'm so glad you mentioned is the one-woman show versus having a team member in place. Aside from being featured and getting completely overwhelmed and shutting down and knowing like, holy cow, I need somebody in place here, what else contributed to that shift for you when you chose to hire a team? Was it because at that point you launched a podcast and so you needed someone to handle more things? Or let's talk more about that.
The first person I hired to my team was a social media manager. And I hired her specifically for Instagram because I do not enjoy Instagram. I'm never on Instagram. And if you send me a message on Instagram, please bear with me. I will see it, but I'm never on it. And so I realized that Instagram was a big driver for me. And so I'm like, okay, I got to get consistent on Instagram. So that was the first person I hired, was someone to take over something that I didn't enjoy. The second hire was a podcast editor. Why? Because I don't enjoy editing podcasts. And I realized that that was what was holding me back from consistency. I would go months without releasing an episode just because of editing. Like, I already had a backlog of stuff I already recorded, but just the editing piece really helped me back. And so that was the second hire, was an editor. And so if you look at what I hire people for is for stuff that I don't enjoy, stuff that I know an expert, if I give it to an expert, if I give it to someone that loves it, they can do it faster, they can do it better, and I don't have to worry about it. And so for me, that was like the initial hires. Then I started thinking, well, Tiffany, you are the CEO of your business. And do you see the CEO doing everything when you look at big companies? Absolutely not. They have the vision, they have the strategy, and then they have the VPs, the directors, the managers, everybody coming down the line that implements what they want. And so I had to start thinking like a CEO. I will say that part actually is a new development. I will say within the past few months, I would say 6 months or so, I started realizing, Tiffany, you need to get rid of some of these things. I enjoy doing them and I might be good at doing them, but is my time better utilized elsewhere? And so I've hired a bookkeeper. I've hired finally a virtual assistant. It took me a long time to get there. Finally hired somebody to help me with emails again. Finally hired an editor for my blog. Finally hired a writer for my blog. And I did these things because, yes, I could do them and I enjoy doing them, but I need to start thinking about, okay, what's the overall strategy for the business? What are things that only the CEO could do or only the CEO knows how to do? And then all the other stuff that's teachable to start giving it up. Right now, I have about 8 people working under me doing different things, and it has freed me up capacity wise to be able to think strategically about the business because yeah, I could have kept going how I was, but I wouldn't grow. I would just keep doing the same thing over and over, which is nothing wrong with it. But as a business owner, you want to grow your business. So anywho, that's kind of my process. I kind of think about things that first I don't like doing that gets farmed out first. But even if I do like doing something, if there's someone that can do it faster than me, that also gets farmed out now.
I love that. I think that was a great little mini textbook for entrepreneurs because, I mean, so many of us, even if at this point you and I have a very similar situation going, but for so long, I think we could both agree that for so long we thought we could do everything. And maybe we could, like you said, maybe we were good at it and we could. But I agree with everything you said as far as like, what do you not like doing? Where are the gaps? Where do you really need the help? And then shifting from like, what can only I do that no one else can do in my business? For me, that is generally interfacing with clients. I'm not saying nobody else could do that, but at this time, that is the role I want to carry. And so if it's not client facing, I don't want to be doing it. I need to be removed from the actual editing. So there's a team in place for that. So I've followed a lot of what you've said. I love that.
Honestly, that's the only way to scale if you think about it. If you try to do everything, you'll never scale your business because you need people. And for me, I'm a perfectionist. I'll just be honest. And I'm very particular about how I like things done and how I do them. And for a while, I've hired people before and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like this is not how I would do it.
What are they
But
doing?
now, but now I understand it wasn't an issue with them. It was an issue with me training them because if somebody has the step-by-step directions on what to do and how to do it, they can do it exactly like you do it. It's just if you bring people on and you don't train them effectively, then of course they're just going to do their own thing and it might not live up to your expectations because they don't know your expectations. That's one thing that I've learned recently, and I've started creating like really in-depth SOPs and video walkthroughs and things like that. So that way people can do it how I would do it.
That's what I was going to say too, and I made a face at you because you said what I was going to say. So, yeah, create the process, SOP, standard operating procedure. So write out the process that you do for every single minute, maybe stupid task that you do in your business. And once you have that documented, someone should be able to do that for you. You brought up doing a video. I think that's an excellent way to pass things off. Have your process written, do the video, talk through it as you're doing the task, share your screen while you're doing it. Guess what? That new contractor gets the SOP, they get that video, they get the login, whatever. They have all the tools. If they have issues, they can ask you a question. That's fine. And I loved what you said earlier about relying on professionals to do the tough things. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Really quick on that point, I stick all of my SOPs and videos in Notion because I said that's the database. So anytime I bring somebody in, they get access to the Notion, which has everything they need in order to pick up and keep going. It has all of the video walkthroughs, all of the SOPs. It has all of the things they need to know about Money Talk with Tiff, my values, my mission, my vision, all of that stuff. So that way I don't have to keep doing this onboarding process over and over. The majority of it is done once they get access to the Notion. And then if they have questions outside of that, then I can step in, and answer. But I wanted to put that out there too, because you have to work smarter, not harder as a business owner. Your time is already crunched. So you want to give people the best onboarding experience possible and make sure that it's efficient and effective, but also think about your time too. So that's why I wanted to throw that out there. Notion has everything for me.
Yeah. And I've even thought about different organizational pieces for me too, because I will be searching my Google Drive for different things. And I'm like, okay. And that's something I pass off to my admin. I'm like, organize this. I'm tired of searching for things. And of course, I'm nice about it because I don't want to be spending my time searching for these things. Again, I want to be doing the high value tasks. And if it's organization of something, I want them to do it. The other piece of that, in a way of delegating, was if you can assign a dollar value to a task, maybe it's writing a social media caption or something like that, and you can assign $20 or less, $50 or less to that task, it needs to be delegated. That's kind of my rule. And I'm still working through that because I will catch myself doing something. I'm like, why am I doing this task? And it's like this ongoing process. I need to delegate this, and I'll message my admin like right away. So that's an ongoing piece of growth, I think, for business owners that we need to start earlier rather than later.
Amen to earlier.
Yeah.
I wish I would have, I feel so much better now, so less stressed. Things are getting done. Nothing's falling off track. And it's because I hired help. I should have done this years ago, honestly, y'all. So years. As soon as you're able to hire someone, figure out what that first hire is going to be and just do it. Like I said, I'm a perfectionist, so I held myself back for a long time. So I was like, nobody's going to do this like me. I have to do it. But that's not a CEO mindset. That is a worker mindset. So, you kind of have to have that mindset switch.
Well, and I will say, hire doesn't mean that you have to have this full-time salary available to this person. My team is made up of contractors that I interviewed and went through the whole process just like I would have hired them full-time, but their work is strictly task-based. They get paid by the task, and they've been with me for 3-4 years. They're wonderful. So don't think that you have to have full-time salary, 50K available for this person that you're going to hire. You have to grow slowly. Then B, don't assume that a contractor relationship immediately means trouble, because if they are vetted and interviewed and provided processes and the lines of communication are open, all those things, just like you would do with any team member, your contractor relationships can be better than employee relationships even, I would say. I want to shift real fast and talk about your podcast, because I would say the thing that you did well earlier rather than later was start your show. So talk to me about what that looked like, why you started your show, and maybe some growth that you experienced during, let's say, your first like 50 episodes? Because I think that's like the biggest, like hardest growth point.
I laughed a little bit. I don't know if you saw me when you said starting it earlier than later, because honestly, it took me like a year to really start my podcast after. Okay, let me tell you what happened. What had happened was I was a guest on one of my good friends now, Danielle Desir, on her podcast, The Thought Card. And that was back in 2018. And so after I got a taste of podcasting, just being a guest, I said, "Ooh, like I want to have my own." And so I spent an entire year going through, okay, what mic should I get? What software do I use to edit? What does my show look like? All of these different things. And it wasn't until I got out of my head and said, "Okay, Tiffany, just start," is when I started the podcast. So when you said that, that's why I chuckled a little bit, because really I could have started earlier, you know, but I did. So I started in 2019 and I just got a $20 mic and just used my MacBook, which I still use today. And that's how I got started. I didn't know what it was going to look like. I wasn't the type of person, I'm still not, where I do like a ton of planning around, the episodes and, what am I going to talk about and this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. And so I just hit record and I just started talking. My first thought was, okay, I can just narrate the blog articles that I've already written and then just, add a little of my personal flavor or whatever. And then those will be my podcast episodes. But then I would say like by episode 4, people started reaching out to be guests. And so I said, because see, I thought that it was just going to be a monologue, that was going to be the podcast. But then people started reaching out to be guests. So I was like, okay, well, let's start having guests on. And now let's think of the podcast as telling other people's stories versus, just narrating blog posts. So then it transformed into that. And then I started getting more and more guests and more and more guests. And so now it's like, I would say 80% guest episodes. If you look at my backlog, it's not until recently where I started doing more solo episodes again. And so it's been through a lot of different iterations. I've had myself introducing the podcast when I first started with like some, people were saying it sounded like some soul session, like music.
I love it.
And then now it's somebody else introducing the podcast. So I hired a voiceover artist to do that. It's looked like so many different things. I used to record in my closet. Now I record in the office. So I've upgraded that space. So there's so many different things that I've tweaked and tried and done on the back end as I went through this journey. But I say all of that to say, sometimes you just have to get it out there to figure out what you need to tweak. Like, I had no idea what I was doing when I first started. Even though I did a whole year of research, I still had no idea till I got it out there. And once I got it out there, I'm like, oh, okay, I can tweak this. Oh, I can make my episodes shorter. Oh, I can, so on and so forth. So just get it out there. Then you'll figure out what you need to tweak, improve. And it happens over time. I mean, I still make changes to the podcast even to this day. Small changes, people might not notice, but I still make changes. Sometimes I'll tweak the show notes, or sometimes I'll do something a little differently with what I say, or what have you. So yeah, you just keep trying, trial and error.
Thank you. I love everything you said, because that I feel is like almost like my sermon that I'm preaching over and over and over. No kidding. Like to every new client, right? There are invisible barriers that we put in place. Which software? How do I record? Where should I sit? What should it look like? What microphone? Like that's a huge one. The equipment. I'm doing a presentation at PodFest about the equipment. And my whole perspective is like, you do not need to spend, $500 up front for your first episode. Let's just get like the cheap mic that's highly rated, like what I have, and it works. And then the other piece that you highlighted was that change is inevitable. You are going to have, things that you want to change throughout your episode journey. And I always tell people, first 10 episodes, there's a big adjustment of growth, especially for someone who may not feel that they've fully found their voice and they don't know what to say, or they have all these imposter syndrome feelings about getting visible because suddenly they're behind the mic and people can hear them. And then again, up until episode 20, up until episode 50, and then the change and like the personal growth kind of tapers off a little bit. It doesn't stop, but it tapers off a little bit as you get toward 100, 200, 300. And there's different challenges at that level. But for the new, I would say for the people who are business owners who are considering marketing their business using a podcast, all of what you said is a completely normal part of the journey. And you can't tweak your show if it doesn't exist. So you have to get it out there. So I love that you shared that. Thank you.
Absolutely. And, I've been an accountability partner for a lot of new podcasters now. There's a few people that have shows because I just pushed them. I'm like, I wish I had someone like me, where it's like, okay, when are you starting? When we're at FinCon, I'm like, oh, there's mics over there. Go ahead and start recording if you want to start a podcast. Like, you might as well use other people's equipment. So it's like, I wish I had a me when I started, but now I'm being that me right now to whoever's listening. Like, just start, just do it and see how it goes, see what happens, and then tweak.
Yeah, tweak, hire an expert, make the changes as you need to. I want to ask you as we close, what did podcasting do for you as far as personal growth in really stepping into speaking about your business and like the growth that you experienced going from, oh, I'm just a blogger, right? To, okay, now I have my face on the website. I'm launching a podcast. People can actually hear me. I'm even more visible, even if visible isn't with your eyes, right? Like it's another platform. So talk to me about the personal growth that you experienced during this whole podcast journey.
Honestly, when I launched the podcast, I was very strategic on when I launched it and how I launched it. And so I launched it right before FinCon. And the reason I did that was because I was like, it's my first FinCon and I want to go and I want to be a podcaster. Like, I want people to know that Tiffany is a podcaster. And so I launched my podcast like a month beforehand because I was like, I want to make sure I have some episodes so, people can look and they can go ahead and listen. And that was strategic because as a person going to my first FinCon, as a new podcaster, I was able to talk about the new podcast. Yes, I have a blog, but I also have a podcast now. And then that's how I got so many people interested in being a guest too. So I would say that really tweaked how the show went from the beginning, because as I was talking about it, people were like, oh, that sounds interesting. Oh, I want to listen. Oh, and so it gave me that boost of confidence very early on as far as keeping the podcast going. Also, it helped me get more comfortable talking to people because, like I said, prior to that, I was only a guest on maybe one or two podcasts before. And so being able to talk to people, coming up with interview questions on the fly, I kind of think of it like improv, right? Podcasting really helps with thinking up things on the fly. My public speaking improved just because I'm able to interview people, get their thoughts, shoot them questions as we go. It helps with a lot of different things with conversation. There's so many things, like people locally, they call me the networking queen now because I'm just so good at now networking and conversing with people when prior to the podcast, that was not a thing really. So it's just helped me so many different ways personally in that regard, where it helps me get out of my shell. It helped me be able to improv more effectively. And then my public speaking has improved for sure.
One more thing on that note. How has having a podcast affected your business?
I will say 60 to 70% of people that find me mention that they've heard the podcast, or they heard of the podcast, or they heard me on another podcaster's podcast. Then they went to listen to mine and then they reached out. So I would say 60 to 70% of my new clients or people that hear about me comes from podcasting now. A lot of people think social media is huge, and it depends on your business. But for me, podcasting and the website are two of the most popular ways people find me.
Well, I'm just going to do this because yes, yes, all of that. Okay, so speaking of clients, please share with us who would be the perfect fit for you as a client, so that, hey, maybe somebody listening is a perfect client for you, or they know someone who would be. And then tell us where we can find you and follow you and see all your amazing stuff.
Yes, so thank you so much for having me and allowing me to share. So there's two sides to my business. There's the B2C and B2B side. So on the B2C side, I help people. I'm an accredited financial counselor. And so I help them figure out goals, financial goals, get a budget going, stay accountable to that budget, pay off debt. That's my fave. So if you have debt, please let me help. That type of thing. On the B2B side, I do a lot of speaking. And then I also have an enterprise solution for financial wellness for employees. So if you're listening and you have a company or you know someone with a company, definitely let me know and reach out, and I'll be more than happy to help. So those are the two different ways that people can work with me, whether they are individual or a company. And you can find me at moneytalkwitht.com is the website. And then also on social media at moneytalkwitht everywhere. And I mean everywhere. I'm on all the platforms. And so that's pretty much how you can find me. And then the Money Talk with Tiff podcast, wherever you're listening.
I was going to say, okay, don't forget your podcast and tell us about your YouTube channel. Like, right. That's why we're here, girl. Yeah. So on YouTube, are you still keeping up with your YouTube channel? Is that still a good spot for people to find you or no?
Yeah. I mean, if you're over there, it's just the audio version of the podcast makes it to YouTube too. But if that's your preferred platform, then by all means, go find me over on YouTube.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you. And I think any business owner listening to this episode got plenty of really solid information and help around what you do when you are down, the affirmations, and then feeling less alone as far as the fear of success or sometimes fear of visibility. Hiring a team is a big deal. And then I love that you shared several tips around podcasting and getting started, and then even keeping that momentum after they get started. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.